This is Andrew Nemec, the Oregonian and Oregon Live. I'm joined again by my kind of a co-host, actually, at this point, Jordan Johnson, a high school football guru from the state of Oregon. Jordan, we just saw the U.S. Army All-American game. The Oregon Ducks, in terms of commitments, go 0 for 2, both four-star wide receivers, but that was actually to be expected. They have Dylan Mitchell already in the fold, Eddie McDoom, who caught the first touchdown in the Under Armour All-American game, and then Tristan Wallace is the number 4 dual-threat quarterback in the country. He's actually confirmed that he's going to play wide receiver. So they were set there at that position for the class of 2016, so it didn't really seem like they had any slots available. So there was no real surprise. It's still disappointing for Oregon fans, I think, or any fan base, when you see hats on the table and watch a kid pick up a different hat. It looks like a momentum turner. In reality, they were full. But what did you see from the Under Armour game? I know one of the things you talked about, or we've talked about, is Jacob Eason, who's a Northwest kid who you've had a chance to see for a number of years. I think he traveled with you guys to some of your camps. I saw him overthrow the ball a lot. I love his arm. I think he's capable of making the best throw of any high school quarterback in the country, but it's a 1 in 10 thing because the other 9 are overthrows or underthrown or thrown too hard. What do you see from Jacob Eason?
Well, physically, I mean, the kid's a freak. I mean, he's got all the intangibles, everything you would want prototypically in your QB. But like you said, if you consistently overthrow and miss your targets and you don't really see any change, I mean, it's something that you eventually worry about. And since we went to Vegas 3 years ago, I mean, this kid was chucking the ball 70 plus on a consistent basis as a 15-year-old kid. It wows you. But at some point you say, okay, is this going to be the theme of his collegiate career? And I think Jacob is someone that can, make some changes and do this and that. I mean, he's ranked where he's at for a reason.
Right. Number 1 player in the nation, yeah. U.S. Army Player of the Year.
Yeah. So I think he's got a bright future. I mean, but once again, I mean, when you get to that level, it's obviously incredibly competitive, and he's going to have to make some adjustments.
I went to that Elite 11, and quarterbacks is my thing. Of all the things that I like to scout and watch and rank, quarterbacks is, I guess, my area of expertise, if I have one. And Eason really concerns me, and I saw within the first 10 minutes of being at practice that he overthrows. He doesn't totally understand. We talk about KYP, know your personnel. He doesn't always know his personnel. He doesn't always know how hard to throw. And you go out in a yard and you play with a third grader, or you go out and throw the ball around with a kid, or you go throw the ball around with a high school athlete or a high school athlete who's going to be a D1, and you handle all of those situations differently. Within five minutes, you know how to throw the ball to get it complete. It matters to him in a high school game to complete his passes. He cares. It's the most important thing for him, and he's overthrowing. He's not understanding touch on a wide or on a running back screen. He's not understanding the touch of hitting a guy in a post route where he's throwing him open and he hits him in stride. He struggles with that, and he struggled with that at the Elite 11. He was benched at the Elite 11. He was the backup quarterback for Shane Buechele, who did understand that. He's a commit to Texas. Shea Patterson at that Elite 11 does understand touch. He understands his personnel. He knows how to throw guys open. He has B-plus tools across the board, but A-plus technique, A-plus finish, A-plus polish. And I worry with Jacob Eason that he's got these A-plus tools and kind of this C- understanding of how to use them right now. And you can coach that and you can teach that, but it's a little bit of a concern. And the reason I bring it up is that I think it is kind of the recruiting divide. I think there are people who see tools and say, wow, at any position, this kid fits what we want. He runs the right 40 time. He's the right height. He's the right size. Gosh, he's going to be a playmaker, whether he's a linebacker or quarterback, but he doesn't totally understand the game. But we'll teach him that. And I don't think it's as easy as all that. And that's why you see some of these guys who are 4- and 5-star kids who end up being bust, frankly. And I'm not saying Eason's going to be. I think he's got the tools. I think he's going to be pretty good for Georgia. But there are guys like this, and it's interesting to see because I thought Shea Patterson going into that Army All-American Bowl would have a better game. I found out he was going to be the West starting quarterback, and I thought he's going to put up big numbers because he knows how to find open guys. Eason, in showcase events, overthrows, and sure enough, He went into that game and overthrew. The West won 37-9. I did want to just touch on that and talk about the U.S. Army All-American Bowl. The Combine was this weekend as well. There were 5 Oregon kids invited. Elijah Molden was not able to go, still nursing an injury, but Central Catholic's Malachi Salou was there. Lake Oswego offensive lineman Dawson Jaramillo, South Medford wide receiver Chase Cota, and Central, not Central Catholic, Central defensive lineman Marlon Tuipaluto, all there. What have you heard from that? What's the takeaway from that for the Oregon kids?
Well, Tui Peloto is a freak. I mean, this kid is going to be a top 3 lineman nationwide. I don't even know what the Oregon 4A teams are going to do next year. We were talking about that to maintain, but on a elite collegiate level, I think he will end up with the majority of the country offering him. He's that good. We talked about comparing him to Nemec Sue. Obviously, that's a bold statement, but he's that legit. I mean, as a sophomore, he was dominating. He was a man amongst boys as a 15-year-old kid. So I think Marlon really showed up, did well, and he's going to have himself a pretty incredible offseason. Dawson, I think we talked about 299 pounds, I believe is what he weighed in.
Yep.
He was 265. So Dawson's a guy ranked the number 2 O-lineman in the country, number 10 overall for that 2018 class. And I think when all is said and done and he gets, like he's in the weight room now grinding, put on 30 pounds, when all of that comes together, I mean, I really do think he's the real deal. So from a lineman standpoint, I think we're going to have 2 of the most special linemen we've ever had in the history of Oregon high school football come out of the state the next couple of years. So Chase Cota, obviously special kid. Oregon, I think it's kind of a no-brainer, especially
they'll offer in the end. I think they will.
So and then Malachi, obviously DJ Salou, who's now at Navy, and being a younger sibling in that family, especially with that size. His father Ace does a great job of training. And I think he's going to be another special kid.
Marlon, there's a video of Marlon just chucking an offensive lineman to the side and making a play. He obviously looked really good. He's rated the number 6 defensive tackle in the country for the class of 2018. And to understand just how rare that is, one, Oregon doesn't always produce defensive linemen, defensive tackles particularly. That's kind of a South Texas SEC country kind of thing. So to have kind of an unknown program in Central, in terms of national recognition, Central's not well known. To have a kid from Central be rated the number 6 defensive tackle when he's 16 years old says just how much hype there already is on this kid. Elijah Molden gets all the hype in the world as being this elite player. He's hearing from LSU, Notre Dame, USC, on top of offers already from Oregon, Washington, and Stanford, a couple others. And Marlon's actually ranked ahead of him on a number of sites. Marlon already has offers from Oregon and Oregon State. He's probably going to be the top defensive line prospect to come out of this state since Nemec Sue. And I think he's got an NFL body if it all comes together. Now, obviously, that's way too far in advance. He's only a sophomore right now. But if it all comes together, he's got a chance to be an all-timer in this state. I think that's really exciting. Dawson Jaramillo continues to show that growth and development. People say, I've gotten emails from readers who have said, I watched him in a game and this senior all-state kid got a sack on him. And it's like, well, yeah, that's going to happen. He's a sophomore. But he's put on 35 pounds. I know he was at the opening regional in Eugene last summer. And quickness-wise, off the charts. Footwork-wise, off the charts. Technique, developing but really solid. The area he struggled, he went up against Connor Murphy out of Brophy Prep. He's a 4-star defensive lineman. He's 6'7", 265, 270. And Connor Murphy just chucked him aside. And his dad, Bradley Jaramillo, was a little concerned about that. He's like, hey, what's up? And it's like, well, strength and development's not quite there yet. Dawson had never been really in a weight room. So to see him gain 35 pounds in 6 months shows that he's finally getting in a weight room. He's lifting. And it was right. It's right to wait until a kid's 15, 16 to start letting him lift. That was a good call. And now you're starting to see that development come. And Dawson's going to live up to the hype. He's going to end up being a 5-star offensive lineman in this class. And I think he's got a lot of potential to be the most heavily recruited player maybe that we've ever seen out of this state.
So before, Dawson was straight raw. He got all these accolades without this weight room activity and so on. now with the training that he's doing, I just, you foresee a 305-pound kid that's super smooth, feet that are incredibly unique, and someone that runs like a tight end. So wherever he ends up, I mean, all of these accolades, your point with regards to people getting sacks on him. I mean, I don't know many sophomores anywhere that don't get exposed at some point.
Right.
When
Totally.
when they're that young. So I think moving forward, watching Dawson over these next 2 seasons is going to be something where justification comes into what he's done, referencing all the awards, accolades, and so on that he's gotten.
I wanted to quickly do a rundown of Oregon and Oregon State. I know that is, I know we primarily talk high school, but I did want to do a quick rundown. Oregon State, as far as I know, is down to about 4 or 5 scholarships left. They are pretty solid on the offensive side of the ball. Tyreek Tisdale was committed to Florida. He is decommitted and is looking at Oregon State. He's an undersized kind of running back receiver, that 5'8", 5'9", lightning quick kid. Other than that, they're looking primarily on the defensive side of the ball. I know they have an offer out to Toby Okafor out of Central Catholic. I think that offer might slide down to a gray shirt offer at this point. I'm not positive on that, but I feel strongly that if Oregon State gets the guys they want to, they're not going to have room for Toby. So he's going to end up being a gray shirt if he commits to Oregon State. In-state priorities are Coyote Rufai, a 3-star defensive lineman out of Lincoln, who is hearing from Oregon now, and Oregon could enter the mix. And if they offer, I think you see Rufai end up being a Duck. But if they don't, I think he still wants to stay in state. I think that might turn into an in-state battle that'll be really interesting to watch. The other one is obviously 3-star linebacker Kalen Hemphill, who really emerged this year as a big-time prospect. Utah offered him on his birthday just a couple days ago. He's looking at Utah, Utah State, Oregon State, Arizona. So he's got a number of offers and a number of things he's looking at. Another guy to consider for Oregon State down the stretch here, 4-star defensive lineman Max Tupai, a really talented D lineman who's been extremely quiet about his recruitment. I believe he doesn't have social media. Certainly I haven't been able to find it, and doesn't grant a lot of interviews. So it's really, I've seen stories that are basically he's still not talking. He still seems open. BYU, Utah, Oregon State, all in the mix for him. And then Herkley Latu is a 6'3", 200-pound linebacker safety. He's visiting Oregon State this weekend. Was committed to BYU. His connection to Oregon State actually was Kalani Sitake. So you've got a kid who's committed to BYU and likes Oregon State because of Kalani Sitake. Sitake leaves for BYU. You'd think that would solidify things. In fact, he still remains interested in Oregon State. Great job by Gary Anderson and his staff to maintain interest, not in a coach, but in a program. He's visiting this weekend, a dynamic piece that can do a lot of things. He can cover, he can blitz, I think he probably develops into an outside linebacker. That's an exciting piece. The Oregon Ducks are pretty much full on the offensive side of the ball. They got a tight end in Cam McCormick early. They've got the receivers. They've got a running back in Vavai Malapai, who was a U.S. Army All-American Bowl selection. He was the leading rusher in the U.S. Army All-American Bowl and looked dazzling. Kind of a, Brady Breeze called him a Kenyon Barner with some Royce Freeman bruising ability. So you know exactly what you're getting there. A shifty back that can run over people. Really exciting. Oregon fans, I'm sure, are thrilled after watching that. He only got 7 or 8 carries, and I think he had around 70 to 80 yards. Mm-hmm. And had a couple spin moves, broke some ankles, looked really, really good. Oregon obviously said it. Quarterback, where they're looking going forward is going to be the defensive side of the ball. Nigel Knott, one of the top 5 corners in the country, still considering Oregon. Obviously, LSU and a number of other programs are in the mix for him. 5-star linebacker Caleb Kelly is down to a Final 3, and Oregon's in that Final 3. People keep saying that, other programs, Oklahoma, Michigan, Notre Dame, have been in there for a long time. Other programs have supposedly been the leader, and he keeps including Oregon. It's going to be really interesting to see if maybe they can't find a way to sneak in there and get him. 5-star Brandon Jones is a safety. I think he's going to end up looking elsewhere. I know he's included Oregon throughout the process, but I think he's going to end up going somewhere else. Keith Sims, a 4-star linebacker, still considering Oregon. I think there's a chance he ends up at Oregon. So you're looking at, and again, we mentioned him earlier in the podcast, 4-star defensive lineman Connor Murphy released his top 5 last night. Oregon's in the mix. I expect him to end up at Michigan, but Oregon is in the fold for him. So a lot going on. It's all on the defensive side of the ball, though. I know readers and fans get excited for quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, because it feels like those guys are the cornerstone of your program. But as we've seen with both Oregon and Oregon State, defense is a huge key going forward. If they can get their defenses aligned, they've got a chance to really be talented, particularly Oregon, obviously, with their offense. If their defense can get situated, they've got a chance to be really electric. It's going to be interesting down the stretch for Oregon to see how they recruit on the defensive side of the ball. As of right now, without a defensive coordinator, probably not the best timing to be looking at 4- and 5-star defensive players when you don't have a guy controlling things, running things. eForce football, Saturday, had their second tryout. You picked 9 guys for essentially the Team Oregon All-Star 7-on-7 team. What did you see? Who got invited? And what are your thoughts going forward?
So this will be our 5th year traveling. We've added a few different tournaments, but we'll be going to Vegas March 5th and 6th. And we take our upperclassmen and our underclassmen teams. And last week we selected our initial 9 for the upperclassmen team. Some of the names, going to be expected, but it's going to be a special year. A lot of these guys helped us when we made that national semifinal run last year, losing to Bishop, who eventually won the national championship. I mean, there were 120 teams out there, so we really got to see who was who. And these kids that are coming back, Elijah Molden, David Morris, Anthony Adams, key members of our group from last year, they were some of the individuals selected, along with Connor Neville, kid with a couple different offers, and he's going to be a QB for us this year. He's got Washington State and Boise State having offered him thus far. So we selected 9 kids. I think most people have seen who, but quick rundown, the 3 that we referenced, plus Neville and Daniel Green, also a super athletic, talented linebacker that before he's done, he's going to have half the Pac-12 and a host of mid-majors having offered him. I think he's a special kid. Who knows how big he gets with his brother being 6'8", 6'9". Right now he's 6'3", 225.
Legit 6'3", 225.
Yeah. Looks the part, and if we're talking about a 7-on-7 setting, he's ideal because you want that athletic, quick linebacker or running back. It doesn't do you any good to have a big monster there in a kid that doesn't run well in a 7-on-7 setting. So to summarize, some of the other kids selected, the only sophomore taken thus far is Braden Lindsay, who most people know about. He'll be a high-profile 2018 recruit out of Tigard. He started as a freshman, first-team All-League. Both ways, lockdown corner, averaged almost 30 yards a catch. Warrior Knoll out of Louisiana, teammates with Daniel Green, plays for Don Johnson's Madison Senators. He's bringing back his whole group next year. They're going to be really fun to watch. Johnny Neville, Connor's brother, 6'4", 210, pushing 6'5", 13 touchdowns, 18 yards a catch this past season. And him and Connor know each other so well, for obvious reasons, that could be a very dangerous pair. And then kind of the kid I really am just so impressed with, Trey Woods out of North Bend. I think he'll be the 4A player of the year favorite next year. He was hurt for most of the regular season, scored 8 touchdowns in the playoffs in 3 playoff games, and he's been driving 10 hours round trip since last year from North Bend to get to our stuff. That's not the reason he was selected, but it just shows you how much this kid cares. And on top of his, overall ability, when you have someone that puts that time in, you can kind of, speaks to their character and what they bring to the table.
One of the things with Trey, I had a chance to talk to him after that camp and just went up and said, because I hadn't seen him really, and he looked really, really good on Saturday. And I said, essentially, where are you at with things? And he said, well, I can play a number of positions, not in terms of recruitment. Where are you at with your on field? Where do you want to play? And he said, well, I was hurt a lot of the year, and then when I came back, I played defensive end, middle linebacker, outside linebacker, some safety, some strong safety, some free safety, but I can play corner. And you just go, okay, dynamic athlete. And he's really interesting because he makes that trip in part, he talked about, to prove that he belongs with these elite guys. He knows North Bend 4A, he doesn't get to play a lot of these 3, 4, 5-star prospects that are in this state right now. Obviously 5-star referencing Dawson. So he makes that trip in part to show where he stacks up. against the state's best. And I think that's an admirable quality in a kid who's trying to figure out where he fits in. He could play a number of spots. He could end up at a number of levels, but he's really actually putting in the time to find out where.
So very well said. I mean, that's the crazy thing about this is you find out who's what. I mean, Mason Elliott, Trey Davis, Demetrius Douglas, a lot of these kids that you'll see out there next week, and there's plenty of selections to be made. So a lot of these kids are that are 5 minutes down the road. It's a pretty easy jump. But when you have a guy like that's driving 10 hours, not just this year but last year, and we've seen him for a while now, it's like, once again, it speaks to what this kid brings to the table and how you can hold him. He's going to be accountable regardless.
How about 2017 Mountain View quarterback Mike Irwin, a kid who maybe doesn't get the looks that Portland area guys would. He was the IMC Player of the Year as a sophomore, ahead of Bledsoe, John Bledsoe at Summit. He beat him out for the Player of the Year award. Injured all of his junior year, comes out to that camp and shows absolutely, without question, some of these Big Sky programs need to offer him. He's a dual threat guy, so 7-on-7 is not necessarily like his time to shine, and he's a polished enough quarterback that he looks really good in that setting. Oh yeah, by the way, he can also maybe in a high school setting run for 1,000 yards in a season. So a really talented player who has emerged and really shown. Now, he's probably not going to make this list because Connor Neville is a 4-star prospect. He's one of the top 250 prospects in the country, according to Scout. But Mike Irwin is going to end up being a 2 or 3-star kid, I think, and getting offers. And he's going to get a lot talked about him because of this camp. He's really shown that he belongs among the top quarterbacks in the state.
So at this last event, separate from Connor, Mike Irwin, Tim Tawa, and Daquan Dennis Lee, probably the top 4 QBs, separate from Bledsoe, in the state of Oregon for that 2017 class. You got the 2-time Oregon Gatorade Player of the Year. You got the Conference Player of the Year, Mike Irwin, whose stock is rising substantially, as you just referenced, and Daquan Dennis Lee, who showed up and dropped 35 TDs to 6 picks or whatever it was this past season for a really good Oregon City team. So that group, that quarterback group, was really special, and it was fun for them to kind of divvy up some throws and hit some of the top receivers in the state. So it was a really fun event. It was as much talent as I've seen on one field in the last 5 years that I've been doing this, on top of having 2 of the top linemen there with that line group, Jackson Kirkland, 6'7", 305, and Alex Forsyth out of West Lynn, 6'4", 300, probably the top 2. I mean, there's Travis McKay and a few other guys in there coming back for that line group, but really, really special event this last Saturday, and we'll be at Clackamas High School this next Saturday, where we'll have our upperclassmen and underclassmen invitations, and that underclassmen group is always fun to put together because you get to see the future. You get to see the guys. We're going to have a couple sophomores playing up, but for the most part, you're going to have a bunch of young talent all playing together, and that's always exciting.
Jackson Kirkland, just to touch on real quick, he's emerged. I mean, we talk about guys who have the size, and always when you see a big offensive lineman that's in that 6'6", 6'7", 300 pounds, you go, okay, the body's there, but how does he play? How does he move? Jackson's made the leap. He's a Pac-12. He's going to get multiple Pac-12 offers. There's no longer any doubt. For a while, it's always like, hey, somebody might take a flyer on him because of his size when they're younger. Even if they don't develop, you see a body like that and say he might get some flyer offers. He's legit. He's going to get those offers. Really talented kid. I'm kind of blown away, frankly, in how much progress he's made in the last, say, 2-3 months, from the beginning of the regular season to now. He's an elite offensive lineman, and it'll be really exciting to see his stock because I think it's going to absolutely soar. If I could, I'm buying stock in Jackson Kirkland because I think it's going to rise double, triple, whatever you want to call it. He's going to be big time.
So his dad was an NFL guy. I mean, he runs as well as any lineman that we have seen, and his work ethic, much like is something you can't teach. I mean, this kid grinds on the field, off the field, whatever it is. And those are those things when we're talking about Skinny Eason or some of those other guys, talk about the whole package. Does he have the whole package? And we've seen some improvements. The way he played during the playoffs and the state title game, just manhandling people. I mean, next year alone, Jesuit has Jackson, Jared and Joel Dahl, both all-league, all-state guys returning, and Travis Spreen, the state's top center for 2018, 6'4", 260. So that group of linemen for Jesuit, Trey Lowe is going to be loving life. Demetrius Douglas is going to be loving life. They're going to have that big front to run behind, and Jackson is definitely a special kid.
People want to know why Tally hasn't gotten more love, and he's really talented, and I like him. He lacks that elite quickness, that elite shiftiness. He's kind of a one cut and go guy. He's not as big and fast as like a Derrick Henry, but he's that kind of back. I mean, to way oversimplify. Part of the reason he hasn't gotten more love is this offensive line that's in front of him. He's been able to put up huge numbers, but as you just pointed out, probably 4 guys worthy of first-team All-State next year. Jackson Kirkland's arguably the top offensive lineman in the state. The Dahl brothers are returning All-League, All-State guys. And Travis Spreen is the only legit center prospect in the state, and he was as a sophomore. He started for Jesuit as a freshman. So you're talking about 4 guys who are All-State. When you have those kind of holes to run through, it makes it easier with a big back because he's got all his momentum going downhill. Nothing against Tally, but people want to know. He's put up these huge numbers. Why is he not getting more love? That's part of it, is that people can see on film, oh my gosh, he doesn't get touched for 9 yards. And that's why. He's got a ridiculous offensive line. Recruiting do's and don'ts. We're 3 weeks away from signing day, approximately. And I wanted to talk to you about some do's and don'ts because there are some kids that are still on the board in this state who have done some things that aren't negative in the sense that they've done things that were bad. They just didn't quite handle the process the right way. So I wanted to talk to you about handling the process the right way and some do's and don'ts that you've seen. We've talked about have social media. Follow assistant coaches, follow position coaches at multiple levels. Follow, if you're an Oregon kid, follow if you're a receiver, Western Oregon's receiver coach, follow Oregon's receiver coach, follow every level because somebody's going to notice that. They might reach out to you, they might not, but at least you have made that connection, you've reached out. What are some recruiting do's and don'ts, and if you have any stories of kids, that would be great. I know I have a couple for myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small circle with regards to college coaches. They all talk. So, especially in the state of Oregon, when it's not a recruiting hotbed, when you start out and you pick your camps, you only have so much time, right? So you can if you're picking Oregon State, and Texas as the camps you're going to go to in the summer, I mean, you better be that dude because the ideal situation is to work your way up versus sitting at the top. If you get some D2s, some D1 AAs legitimately interested offering you get yourself an offer or two, well, you have some bargaining chips. You have someone else has to come in and beat that offer.
Sure.
They have to say, if you got a half ride plus books, well, that next person has to provide a better opportunity and something else tangible that sounds more appealing. So the way we think about things, Alex Brinks does a good job with this, and some of the other guys is, you pick and choose, but you be smart. You have to self-assess. You have to be able to know, look, here I am, maybe not on a statewide level, but on a national level, because we see time and time again individuals reach for the stars, go to those Pac-12 camps, and more times than not, it doesn't work out that way. That's not to say they're not a good player. But work those D1 AAs, those big skies, those high-end D2s, maybe those mid-majors. Get to some different levels. NAIA schools can provide you a full athletic scholarship if they want. So, there are it depends on what your goals are, but, I mean, if anyone willing to pay for your school, I think is a big deal. I don't care who it is.
Right.
So if you're looking to pick camps or what have you, make sure you have a couple different levels in there unless you're almost 100% positive that you're going to be a big-time guy.
For people who don't know necessarily what we're talking about, prospects of varying levels, whether you're a 4-star or a no-star, go to camps, go to summer camps at various colleges, and they're run by college coaches, and there are a lot of college coaches who can go and who are there. You go to Oregon, Oregon's going to see you. You go to Oregon State, Oregon State's going to see you. And a lot of these kids get excited that they're going to Oregon's football camp. And while that's really good, they're missing an opportunity to maybe go to a camp at Western Oregon, maybe Southern Oregon, and they're not getting seen by those coaches. And suddenly they're not getting any offers, and they're wondering, what happened? I'm good enough to play college football. And it's like, yes, but you didn't do the things necessary to get noticed by the directional Oregon schools. You went straight for Oregon State camps because you thought it'd be cool to have your picture in an Oregon State jersey. That's awesome, but you're not going to play for Oregon State. And that takes a lot of, like you've said, self-awareness, self-reflection, and self-evaluation. And sometimes, and I've had kids ask me, and I'm willing to help, I know you are too, what level do you think I'm at? You know, you look at a guy like Mike Irwin, he's a really talented player, but he gets it. He knows the process. I asked him where he's going to go. And I think he's a Big Sky player, no question. And he said, I need to start with the directional Oregon schools. And what that does is he gets an offer from Southern Oregon, Western Oregon, a couple of those. Portland State has to look at him now. Because if he slips through the cracks and is a star, and I mean projection, crazy projection, ends up in the NFL or something, and Portland State missed on him, they're kicking themselves. And somebody is getting in trouble or chewed. So they have to look at him suddenly. If you don't create that hype for yourself by going maybe a step lower than you think to start, and you can go to an Oregon camp, but also make sure you go to a smaller camp. We had a guy this year, and I think he's really talented, and his camps were all Pac-12 camps. He didn't go to any Big Sky camps, and he was a Big Sky player. There's no doubt. I have no doubt. I don't think he belonged in the Pac-12, and he's sitting here now on the board, 3 weeks left, and not real sure where he's going to end up. He's got a couple of lower-level Big Sky offers, but nothing else. And he's saying, I don't know what I did wrong, I think. I mean, having talked to him, he's disappointed in where he's ending up. And a lot of it came down to not evaluating properly. There's another kid in the state, and another issue is handle it like a business trip. Don't go and assume anybody owes you anything. And there's a Northwest kid, he's not necessarily an Oregon kid, there's a Northwest kid who's made the rounds with some Pac-12 programs, he's made the rounds with some Big Sky programs, and because he's put up huge numbers and because he's been a star since he was young, he thought he was needed, maybe when he wasn't needed. I think he's like a bubble Pac-12, Mountain West, Big Sky, you don't know where he's going to end up. And he handled it so poorly that I got a phone call from a college program, and I don't want to even hint at where that would be. And they basically said, and in not these words, much harsher words than I can even say in a podcast, to heck with this kid. To heck with this kid. We're done with him. We don't want to talk to him. We don't want him on our campus. We are done. It is over for that kid. And that made the rounds. I'm sure it made the rounds, because if a program feels that strongly, that goes to other places. And he is uncommitted with no offers. Again, a Northwest kid who probably should have offers has nothing because of the way he's handled the process. So treat it like a business trip. Start out at the lower level and create buzz for yourself. If you're Elijah Molden, you don't need to worry about a Western Oregon camp. And I'm just using his name because he does know. Mike Irwin knows the process. I'm sure Mike Irwin's going to go to a directional school camp and create that buzz for himself, and he's going to get a couple offers, and suddenly the Big Sky's going to look at him, and he's going to be seen because he's going to handle the process the right way. Make sure you're handling it the right way. Jordan, anything else to add on that?
No, I think that's incredibly well said. And once again, in the Northwest, this isn't Texas, Florida, Cali, right? I mean, it's a little different. So you got to do things a certain way, and options are good. If you have options on the table, more people will pay attention and be interested in you. So work your way up versus starting at the top, and then 3 weeks before signing day, you're saying, what's up, So great kids, and recruiting in this region has picked up immensely in the last 5 to 10 years, and it's exciting for us doing what we do and for the kids and families in this region, because I don't foresee that changing anytime soon. So we're stoked to travel with some of these kids and see if we can get back to the Final Four this year in Vegas. And for what you have done at Oregon Live, I know we've talked about this a little bit outside, but I think it's just important that people know that there hasn't been someone like you at the Oregonian Oregon Live doing what you do. And I know you're not looking for a pat on the back right now, but
No,
it is important. It is important because there wasn't anyone that did this before, ever. And I think it speaks volumes to not just what we do from a recruiting standpoint, but the kids and the families and the effort that's being put forth. And I think, for the most part, they should just be extremely proud, people of this region, on what they've done to bring Oregon and Pacific Northwest football to where it's at today.
I think it is growing. We're seeing more and more quality talent in this state. It's more and more fun each year to look at this talent because 2017 has some 5 or 6 real elite players. 2018 has a lot of depth. It's going to be real fun over the next couple of years, and it's really I enjoy the heck out of going to these camps and getting to see 20 of the top 30 players in the state. And I know when Chase and those guys get back from the U.S. Army Combine, 4 or 5 of the best players in this state were gone. And there was still a really elite camp with 20 elite players. So a lot of fun for me to go to those camps and watch one-on-ones with some of the best talent in the state. So thanks for having me, and thanks for joining me for the podcast.